He was standing in my doorway again, naked, smiling like he owned me. I froze, holding the tray with his dinner in trembling hands. The mashed potatoes slid toward the edge of the plate. My eyes refused to look down at his body, but his voice slithered into the room like a snake. "You know what to do, Mama Jean." That was what he called me, Mama Jean, like I was his mother. Like I was something to mock. I wasn't his mother. I had married his father after a lonely stretch in my 60s, when I thought love had given me a second chance. But the man I married died only 2 years later. And then his son moved in. That's when the nightmare began. That night, I shut the door quietly behind me and locked it with shaking hands. I didn't eat dinner. I just sat on my bed, staring at the photo of my late husband, Harold, whispering, "Why did you leave me with him?" I'm Jean Harrington. I'm 85 years old, a retired hospital nurse from Kansas. I used to hold babies in my arms and bring people back from the brink. I have worn white shoes and cleaned blood off gurneys. I've seen life and death. But nothing prepared me for living with a monster under my own roof. I wasn't always alone. Once, I had a sister, a best friend, and a little dog named Poppy. But they're all gone now, and somehow, the only one who remained was Dylan. My stepson. Harold's only son from a wild relationship long before he met me. I never wanted him to move in, but after Harold died from a stroke, Dylan showed up with a duffel bag and that same wolfish grin he wore even at the funeral. I remember the moment like yesterday. "Don't worry, Mama Jean," he had said, wrapping a long arm around my shoulder. "I'll take care of you now." If only I'd known what that meant. When I first married Harold, he was charming and respectful. He'd met me at the pharmacy where I worked part-time. I had already retired from full-time nursing, but I missed people. He used to visit every Wednesday, asking for vitamins he didn't need just to hear me speak. We had coffee on our third visit, and 2 months later, we were married in a small ceremony under a gazebo in Missouri. He never mentioned Dylan much, just that he wasn't around, that he was wild like his mother. I thought nothing of it. 2 years into our quiet retirement, Harold collapsed one morning beside the fireplace. I tried CPR. I called 911. I begged him to stay. But he was gone before the ambulance arrived. And that same evening, yes, the same day, Dylan showed up with 2 suitcases and a bottle of bourbon. "I'm family," he said, letting himself in. "And this place looks too damn big for one old lady." That was the first red flag. But I was grieving, vulnerable, lonely. I told myself he was just trying to adjust. I gave him the guest room. I made his coffee every morning. I was trying to keep Harold's memory alive through kindness. Then the touching started. At first, it was a hand on my shoulder that lingered too long. Then a hug that held me too tight. Then comments about my nightgown. I laughed nervously, like most women do when they're uncomfortable but too polite to say something. And then one night, he came into my room. He stood at the door and watched me sleep. That night, I screamed. He ran. But it was the start. The first time he assaulted me, I was coming out of the shower. The hallway was dark. I didn't hear him. I was wearing my robe. He grabbed me from behind and whispered something vile in my ear. I remember the tiles. I remember the way the floor felt cold on my back. I remember the ceiling fan spinning as he covered my mouth and whispered, "You don't tell anyone, Mama Jean. No one would believe you. You're just a tired old lady." He was right. Who would believe me? An old woman, nearly 74 at the time, living alone in the house her husband left behind? No children. No siblings. No friends who still called. I stayed quiet. And the abuse continued. I ask myself that question every night. Why did I stay? Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was a shame. Or maybe it was the years of being a nurse, always telling myself I could fix things. That if I stayed kind, he'd stop. That if I didn't provoke him, he'd leave. That if I cooked the meals right, folded the laundry, paid the bills, he'd move on. But abusers don't move on. They escalate. He started locking me in when he left. Took away my car keys. Installed cameras in the living room and kitchen. Told me it was for safety. I wasn't safe. I was a prisoner in my own house. I started writing letters. Not to mail, but to remind myself I still had a voice. I wrote to God. I wrote to my dead husband. I wrote to my younger self. And one letter I wrote to the police. I folded it up and placed it in the lining of my coat. Just in case. 12 years. That's how long this lasted. Until last Tuesday. That day started like any other. Dylan had been drinking again. He yelled because his eggs were too runny. He pushed me. My hip hit the corner of the counter. I cried out. He laughed. And then he said something I will never forget. "You're lucky I let you live here." Something inside me snapped. I looked him in the eye for the first time in years and said, "No, you're lucky I let you live." He looked confused. Like he didn't expect a response. Like I wasn't a real person anymore. He walked away. I went to my room, took out the letter I had hidden, and unfolded it. My hands were trembling, but my voice was steady when I picked up the phone. 911, what's your emergency? "I need help," I whispered. "He's in the house. He's been hurting me. For 12 years. Suddenly, I heard heavy boots outside my door. "Mama Jean." Dylan called, his voice slick with suspicion. "Who are you talking to?" I dropped the phone. He was turning the doorknob. And I had nowhere to run. I didn't move. I couldn't. My heart slammed against my ribcage like it was trying to escape through my chest. The phone was still on the floor, operator faintly calling, "Ma'am? Are you safe? Do you need assistance?" But I couldn't respond. Because Dylan was at my door. The knob twisted slowly. Click. Locked. Thank God I had locked it. "Mama Jean," he said again. His voice was low, slow, dangerous. "You in there talkin' to someone?" Silence. My breath was caught in my throat. I didn't dare answer. Then, bang! His fist hit the door so hard the hinges rattled. I screamed, backing into the corner of the room. I could hear the 911 operator still faintly speaking from the floor. I picked the phone back up and whispered, "He's trying to break the door down." "Ma'am, stay calm. Officers are en route. Stay on the line." But I didn't feel calm. I felt like a trapped animal. "Open this damn door," he shouted. And then, silence. No banging. No yelling. Just footsteps, fading down the hallway. I waited a full minute before I dared to breathe. He was gone, for now. But the fear didn't leave. I didn't know how long it would take for the police to arrive. 5 minutes. 10. What if he came back before they did? I grabbed the only thing I could use to defend myself, my heavy metal bedside lamp. I clutched it with both hands and crouched by the dresser, facing the door. Waiting. Before I made that call, I had written in my journal, like I did every night. But this time, I signed my name. Jean Harrington. I am 85 years old. If anything happens to me tonight, it was Dylan. Please read this. That was the night I was finally ready to die, if I had to, but not without telling the truth. The smell of him, the sound of his boots dragging across the wooden floor, the way he laughed when I cried. It haunted every corner of my house. I had stopped looking in mirrors. I didn't recognize the woman I'd become, skin sagging from grief, eyes hollow from decades of fear, and shoulders bent under the weight of silence. I once helped babies take their first breaths. Now I was barely breathing myself. The flashing red and blue lights outside the window hit the walls like salvation. I heard car doors slam. I heard men shouting. And for the first time in years, I felt hope. Then, bang, 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 on the front door. "This is the police. Open up." I scrambled to the window, waving through the glass. "Up here," I yelled. "Second floor." But Dylan got to the door first. I heard him unlock it. "Good evening, officers," he said with that slick, honeyed tone he always used on strangers. "Everything's fine. My stepmother's just confused. She's been forgetting things lately." I froze. The officers paused. "Sir, we received a 911 call from this address." "That's right," Dylan said. "She called you by mistake. She's 85. You know how old folks get." Something cracked inside me. That's how he always won. He used my age against me, my silence, my fear. But not tonight. I threw open my window and screamed, "Don't believe him. He's lying. I called. He hurt me." The officers looked up sharply. One of them put a hand on his weapon. "Ma'am, are you safe?" One shouted up. "No," I cried. "He's been abusing me for 12 years. That was it. The mask fell from Dylan's face. He turned and ran. I heard officers pushing inside, footsteps racing down the hallway, a scuffle, shouting. Then, handcuffs clicking. Finally, silence. They took him away. I watched from my porch, wrapped in a blanket, my bones shivering from shock. An officer, young enough to be my grandson, handed me a thermos of warm tea. His voice was gentle. "You're safe now, ma'am." But I didn't feel safe. Not yet. Because you don't erase 12 years of terror in one night. They searched the house the next day. The cameras, the locks, the bruises. The nurse at the hospital took one look at my hip and asked if I wanted to press charges. I nodded, tears sliding silently down my cheeks. The detective came 2 days later. His name was Officer Brett Carlyle. Mid-40s, salt and pepper hair, serious eyes but kind voice. He sat across from me in my living room and said, "Ms. Harrington, we believe you. You don't have to go through this alone." I looked down at my hands, veiny, thin, shaking, and I said something I hadn't dared say in years. "I want to live." He smiled softly. "Then let's start by telling your story." I opened that journal, the one I'd hidden in the laundry hamper all these years. I showed him the entries, the names, the dates. The photos I managed to sneak on an old phone I kept behind the bookcase. Everything was there. He looked at me with such sadness. Not pity, respect. And then he said something that finally broke the chain I'd worn for 12 years. "You're not just a victim, Ms. Harrington. You're a survivor." That night, I slept with my bedroom door wide open. Because Dylan was gone. But my story, that was just the beginning. 3 nights later, I received a letter. No stamp. No return address. Just a folded paper left on my porch under a rock. I opened it slowly. It read, "You think it's over? I taught him everything he knows." I froze. Because the handwriting was from his mother. A woman I thought was dead. I dropped the letter. It felt like the wind stopped moving. "You think it's over? I taught him everything he knows." That single line danced across my mind like a curse etched in fire. For 12 years, I thought I was being tormented by one man. One sick, violent man. But now I realized, he didn't come from nowhere. He was taught. And worse, She was still out there. I hadn't heard her name in years. I had only met her once, briefly, at Harold's funeral. She didn't cry. She didn't speak to me. She just stood in the back, black sunglasses on, lips curled in something between hatred and a grin. Her name was Rita Carlisle, Dylan's mother, Harold's ex. And now, my ghost returned. I remember it clearly. After Harold's burial, I stood by his casket as people left in pairs and groups, some nodding respectfully, others offering gentle words. But then I noticed a tall woman, rail-thin, with bleached white blonde hair and blood-red lipstick. She wore a long black coat even though it was warm. Her eyes never left me. I approached her hesitantly. "You must be Rita," I said, trying to offer something kind. She didn't shake my hand. She just tilted her head and said coldly, "You think you're the last woman Harold will hurt? Bless your naive little heart." And then she walked away. That moment stuck with me. I never saw her again. I assumed she disappeared into whatever life she'd come from. But now she is back. Watching me. I stared out the window, searching the street. Nothing but a quiet Kansas neighborhood. A boy riding a bike. A dog barking in the distance. The kind of calm that hides evil just beneath the surface. I picked up the letter again. Same cursive. Same perfume, cheap and sweet, like she always wore. The envelope had no fingerprints. I called Officer Carlisle. He came within 30 minutes. "This was on my porch," I said, handing him the letter. He read it. His brow furrowed. "Rita Carlisle?" he asked. I nodded. She was Dylan's mother. She was Harold's first wife. "And your late husband never mentioned her again?" "Only that she was unstable." That's the word he used. Carlisle tapped his fingers against the kitchen table. "Jean, I think we may be looking at more than one abuser here." I swallowed hard. "I think she's coming for me next." The detective ran a check. Rita had been arrested twice, once for assault in the 1980s, once for illegal firearm possession in the 1990s. No conviction. Both cases dropped mysteriously. No known address now. "She's a ghost," Carlisle muttered. "She slips in and out of towns. Uses fake names. No job history, no paper trail." But I knew better. Women like Rita don't disappear. They lurk. He assigned a patrol car to circle my neighborhood for the next few nights. He said I should consider moving into a shelter temporarily. I looked around my home, my bookshelves, Harold's photos, my tea kettle, and shook my head. I've been a prisoner here long enough. I'm not leaving. Carlisle hesitated, then said softly, "Then promise me this, don't go outside after dark. And don't open the door unless it's the police. Understand?" I nodded. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a matter of if she would come. It was when. 3 days passed. No more letters. No knocks on the door. But I kept waking at 2 a.m. each night. And each time, I'd swear I saw a figure across the street. Not moving. Just standing. Watching. The 4th night, I decided to be ready. I put on my thick robe, slid my pepper spray into one pocket and my house keys in the other. I sat in my chair by the front window, lights off, watching the street with binoculars I hadn't used since birdwatching with Harold. Nothing. Then, around 1:58 a.m., a figure appeared. Tall, thin, blonde hair. My blood ran cold. She crossed the street slowly, deliberately, wearing the same black coat. I could see her through the binoculars now. Her lips were red. Her eyes were bright even in the dark. She stopped in front of my lawn and smiled. She pulled something from her coat. A camera. She took pictures of my house. Then she walked away. By morning, I showed the photos from my porch camera to Detective Carlyle. He was silent for a long time before saying, "She's testing your nerves. She wants you rattled. She may be planning something bigger." "What do I do?" I whispered. "You file a restraining order. You keep doors locked. And if you see her again, you call me directly. You don't speak to her. You don't challenge her. Just call." But I had a different idea forming, one I didn't tell Carlyle, because the next time she came near my house, I would not hide behind the curtains. I started recording my front yard. I wrote every detail in my journal: date, time, what she wore, where she stood. I wasn't going to be a victim again. I was going to gather evidence, because something told me this wasn't just personal. This was deeper. Why else would she leave a note like that? Why did she say she taught Dylan? And then I found it. While organizing some of Harold's old files in the attic, I found a locked box. Inside, court documents, photos, police reports. From decades ago. Dylan had a history, not just with me, but with other women, and Harold had tried to hide it. I turned to the final page in the box, a photo of a woman bruised and crying. She looked young. In the corner of the photo was a date, 2004. And on the back, in faded ink, it read, "My name is Natalie. If you find this, please help me. Dylan did this. And his mother knew." I dropped the photo. Natalie wasn't just a name. She was real. And I had to find her, before Rita found me. I stared at the name scribbled on the back of the photo like it was written in blood. Natalie. The photo itself was grainy, the kind you'd get from a cheap disposable camera. But her eyes. They were screaming. Even through the blur, I could see a welt on her jaw and the fear frozen into her expression. And worse, she looked like a teenager. I couldn't breathe. The date said 2004. That meant Dylan had been abusing girls long before he ever laid a hand on me. And the worst part? His mother knew. Rita wasn't just aware of what he'd done. She helped cover it up. I took the photo to Detective Carlyle the next morning. He scanned it, quiet as always. Then he looked up at me. "This girl, she never filed a report. There's no Natalie listed in Dylan's background files." I nodded. But Harold had this hidden. Why would he keep it? Carlyle sighed. Because sometimes men would rather bury the truth than admit the monster they raised. His words hit me like a fist. He tapped the photo again. "If she's out there, we need to find her." I went back through the box. There were more clues, scraps of notebook paper with scribbled names, 2 outdated phone numbers, and 1 torn envelope with no return address but a postmark from Topeka, Kansas. That was my starting point. Carlyle helped me place a call to a detective in Topeka. A kind woman named Officer Greer agreed to meet with me via video chat. Her eyebrows lifted when I showed her the photo. "That's Natalie Carmichael," she said softly. "I know that face." My pulse spiked. "She's alive." Last I checked, yes, but she dropped off the grid in 2005. We only had one report involving her, a domestic disturbance. No arrest. And then, poof, gone. Was Dylan involved? Greer nodded. He was listed as her boyfriend. But the family wouldn't press charges. They withdrew the complaint within a week. Just like everything around Dylan. Erased. Hidden. Buried. But now I know her name. Natalie Carmichael. And I was going to find her. I haven't driven far in years. My joints ache in the mornings, and my eyesight isn't what it used to be. But I packed my overnight bag, took my emergency pill kit, and told Carlyle I was heading to Topeka. He insisted I shouldn't go alone. I agreed. That's how I found myself riding shotgun in an unmarked police vehicle with a detective I'd only met 10 days ago. Carlyle had become more than just my protector. He'd become my lifeline, and something in his eyes told me he carried his own shadows. We arrived in Topeka by noon. Greer met us with a file, Natalie's last known address, a women's shelter called Faith and Fern. We went straight there. The shelter stood on the edge of a tired neighborhood, brick walls, chain-link fence, and a faded sign. Inside, it smelled like oatmeal and Lysol. I sat with my hands on my lap while Carlyle explained our purpose. A woman named Cheryl, the director, came out to meet us. She looked at the photo. Her eyes welled. She stayed here in 2005. 5 months. Never spoke much. But she was broken. You could tell. Do you know where she went? I asked. Cheryl nodded. She left a number on a prayer card. Said if someone like her ever came looking, to call her. I've never used it. Until now. Cheryl stepped into her office, leaving the door cracked open. I heard the phone ring. Then a pause. Then a soft voice. Hello. It was her. Natalie. Cheryl explained the situation gently. Told her an elderly woman needed to talk. I don't know what she said exactly, but 10 minutes later, we were on our way to a rundown apartment complex on the east side of town. Carlyle offered to go in first, but I told him no. This was my story, and I needed to face it. She opened the door cautiously, peeking through the crack before unlatching the chain. She was older now, mid-30s, tired eyes, but I'd recognize that face anywhere. Are you Jean? She asked. Yes. I've been waiting for this day, she whispered. We sat in her living room, surrounded by cracked walls and a toddler's toys. She poured tea from a chipped kettle. Her hands shook. I was 16 when I met Dylan, she said. He was 21. Told me he'd protect me from my stepdad. Instead, he became worse. And his mom, Rita? She let it happen. She used to watch. I covered my mouth, nausea washing over me. She'd say things like, "You need to learn your place, girl." And when I tried to run, they threatened my brother. I had no choice. My tears fell freely now. You're not alone anymore, I whispered. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a notebook, just like mine. Every detail, she said. I wrote it down, just like you did. The evidence they never expected. Carlyle looked through her notebook. It was detailed. Locations, dates, names of others who might have seen or heard. I think we have enough to build a case against not just Dylan, he said, but Rita too. My hands shook as I held Natalie's. For the first time in years, I felt something new blooming in my chest. Justice. That night, back in my own bed, I finally slept. Until 4:13 a.m. A crash shattered the silence. My front window smashed. I ran downstairs with my flashlight. Lying in the broken glass was a dead bird, wrapped in a piece of black lace, and on the bloodied cloth was a note. Crows always return to the bones they came from. And this time, the signature wasn't Dylan. It was Rita. The sound of glass shattering hadn't just startled me, it sliced through something deep inside. I had survived 12 years of abuse, I had found a woman Dylan had nearly destroyed, and I had taken my first breath of freedom in over a decade. But now it was clear. Rita wasn't done. I stood barefoot in my front hallway, trembling in my nightgown, shards of broken glass crunching underfoot. In the middle of it all lay the small, lifeless body of a crow, wings twisted, neck snapped. Wrapped in black lace. Blood seeped into the threads. And then, taped to the crow's beak, a note, written in that same cruel, slanted script. Crows always return to the bones they came from. It wasn't random. Crows were her symbol. I remembered, back at Harold's funeral, she wore a silver crow pendant around her neck. Said it was her spirit guide. Back then I thought she was just being eccentric. Now I know better. This was a warning. She wanted me to know she'd been inside the boundaries of my home. That she could touch me. That she still had control. But she was wrong. I wasn't going back into that cage. Detective Carlyle showed up at 5:03 a.m. He didn't even knock, just stormed in through the front, flashlight in one hand, gun drawn in the other. His eyes swept over the mess before they landed on me. I was standing in the corner of the hallway, wrapped in a blanket, still barefoot. "You didn't call me," he said, almost angrily. "I couldn't think," I whispered. He lowered his voice immediately. "I'm sorry. You scared me." I nodded. "I think she was here." "Rita." He nodded grimly. "We're going to process this. But this is escalation. And it means one thing, Jean." He paused. "She's about to do something big." By mid-morning, police tape crossed my broken window. An officer sat outside in his car. I gave my statement for the 4th time, and I filed a restraining order against Rita Carlyle. But the judge was hesitant. "You have no recent photo. No known address. You don't even know her legal name anymore." "She's stalking me," I said, voice raised for the first time. "She left a dead animal in my home." But the judge only offered me a temporary protective order. No arrest. No search. Just paper. Paper that wouldn't stop a woman like Rita. "She's smart," he said as we sat in his cruiser outside my house that evening. "She knows how to skirt the law. She's studied it." "You think she's going to come for me?" I asked. "No," he said. I blinked. He looked over at me. "I think she's going to go for Natalie first." My breath caught. "She's the only other witness now," Carlyle explained. "If she's planning something, it's to erase the trail. You've brought her into the light, Jean. And Rita lives in the dark." We called Natalie immediately. She didn't pick up. We tried again. Nothing. Carlyle hit the siren. The drive to Topeka was silent. Every mile we passed, I couldn't shake the image of that crow. How precise it was. How cold. Natalie had a child. A little boy named Mason. What if Rita didn't just want to scare? What if she wanted to destroy? When we arrived, her door was slightly ajar. Carlyle drew his weapon again. "Stay behind me." But I didn't stay. I pushed the door open and ran in. The apartment was trashed. Drawers ripped out, furniture overturned, glass broken. Natalie's tea kettle lay on the floor, still warm. But no blood. No Natalie. No Mason. Clear. Carlyle called from the bedroom. No sign of them. But there was something on the wall, written in red lipstick. "One by one. I taught him well." And beneath it, a photo of me from 10 years ago, in the garden, holding a sunflower. She'd been watching me that long. I dropped the photo. My hands were ice. "She's not just after us," I whispered. "She's been stalking me for a decade." Carlyle swept the room. "She's gone underground. We'll send out an Amber Alert on Mason. Natalie might have escaped. Or she was taken." My knees gave out. He caught me. "I can't lose this," I whispered. "You won't," he said. "I promise." I returned home a few hours later. Carlyle ordered 24-hour surveillance on my house. I sat in my rocking chair and stared at Harold's old photograph on the mantel. And for the first time, I was angry at him. How could you let this into our lives? Then I remembered something. The basement. He always kept it locked when Dylan visited. Said it was too dangerous with tools down there. But what if... I grabbed the spare key, walked down the creaky stairs, and unlocked the basement door. The air was musty. The light flickered. But then I saw it. A trunk in the corner. Inside, boxes of letters, files, old videotapes. One even marked, Dylan, 1998 incident. And at the bottom, a journal. Harold's journal. I opened it. The first line read, "If you're reading this, Jean, I'm sorry. I knew." I flipped through the pages, my hands trembling. He described everything. Rita, Dylan, the young girls, the bribes, the lies. And at the very last page, a final note. They buried a girl once, in 2002. Her name was Rosie. I froze, because Rosie wasn't just a name in his journal. She was the girl who used to live in this house before me. And if she was buried, where? I didn't sleep. How could I? My basement had just confessed a secret. A name. A girl. Rosie. Buried. Gone. Forgotten. Right under my feet all these years. I sat in the dim light of my kitchen, Harold's journal spread across the table. It felt like holding a ghost. The ink was shaky. Some pages were smudged. But the confession was clear. Rosie was Rita's niece. She disappeared after staying here in 2002. Dylan was the last one to see her. Rita told me to forget it. She said the world forgot girls like Rosie. I was too weak to go to the police. I buried it. Literally. That word. Literally. He meant it. There was a body on this property. And I'd been planting tulips above her every spring. When I told Detective Carlyle about the journal entry, he went silent. "Jean," he finally said, "do you know where Harold might have buried someone?" I hesitated. The backyard. Beneath the oak tree. The one Harold insisted I never cut down, no matter how sick it got over the years. I'd always thought it was just sentiment. Now I know better. He was guarding a grave. The next morning, police officers arrived with shovels, tape, and a forensic van. Neighbors watched from porches and blinds, whispering behind hands. They had no idea what lay beneath this house, what I had endured, what Harold had hidden. They marked off the area beneath the old tree and began to dig. It didn't take long. Less than 3 feet down, the shovel hit something soft. Wrapped in black plastic. Tied with rope. A small skeleton. And beside her, a bracelet with little pink beads. It spelled her name. Rosie. Rosie's remains confirmed everything. Carlyle moved fast. He brought in more investigators, reopened cold cases from the early 2000s, and issued a formal arrest warrant for Rita Carlyle, now officially a fugitive. News vans parked outside my house for the first time ever. I watched from my window as they set up tripods and broadcast live. Elderly woman's backyard holds key to decades-old abuse ring. I wasn't sure whether to feel sick or relieved. 3 days later, I got the call. Carlyle's voice was tight with urgency. She showed up at a fire station, shaking, holding Mason. No injuries. I dropped the phone and cried. They brought her straight to the station. She said she had escaped a motel room where Rita locked her inside. She waited until Rita passed out drunk and ran barefoot down the highway until she found help. She was planning something worse, Natalie said, voice hoarse. She had gasoline. She was going to burn us both. My heart nearly stopped. She said, Natalie whispered, that if she had to go to hell, she was taking us with her. Carlyle and his team kept digging, literally and figuratively. They searched Rita's last known properties, questioned her old friends, and pulled bank records. And then they found something that made the hair on my neck stand up. Harold had funded Rita's escape. Back in 2005, he'd wired money to a secret account in her name. I think he tried to buy her silence, Carlyle said. But why? I asked. Because, Carlyle said slowly, he may not have been completely innocent either. The idea made my stomach turn. But the truth had sharp teeth. There were receipts, old hotel records, a letter from Rita to Harold dated 2006, found in a storage unit. You owe me for what happened to Rosie. You let it happen. You stood there and watched her beg. You buried her. I kept your secret for 12 years. Don't make me talk. My hands trembled reading it. Harold didn't just fail to protect me. He may have participated. He may have started it all. The man I mourned for a decade. The man whose ashes still sat in a jar on my mantel. Was I going to let his memory stay? Or tell the truth about who he really was? I sat in the backyard that night, beside the hole where Rosie once lay. The police had filled it and planted new grass. But I still saw the darkness underneath. I held Harold's urn in my hands, and I walked it to the trash. At 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I was already awake. Unknown number. I answered, voice shaking. Hello. The voice on the other end was quiet, croaky, but unmistakable. You've been digging up graves, Jean, but you forgot the one I left for you. I froze. The line went dead, and outside, I heard a soft scraping sound against my back door. Scrape, scrape, scrape. It wasn't loud, but it was there, right outside my kitchen door, like fingernails dragging across the glass, like something or someone waiting. I stood frozen, clutching the phone so tightly I thought it might snap in half. My breathing came in shallow gasps. My eyes darted to the back door, where the motion sensor light should have flicked on. It didn't. And that's when I knew. She'd cut the power. Rita was back. I backed slowly toward the hallway, my feet barely making a sound against the hardwood floor. My knees screamed, but I forced them to stay steady. Years of nursing taught me how to move quietly. Years of surviving Dylan taught me how to breathe in fear. I reached the hallway closet and pulled out the emergency flashlight. Click. It flickered on, and that was when I saw it. A shadow behind the glass of the back door. A figure. Tall. Still. And smiling. She didn't move. She didn't need to. I did. I ran to the front door, phone in one hand, flashlight in the other, and hit the speed dial for Detective Carlyle. No signal. Dead. Just like the house line. She cut that too. I looked at my old landline sitting on the table, blinking red like it was crying for me. She knew every inch of this home, because she'd once lived here. I heard it then, the lock on the back door jiggling. She had a key. Of course she did. Harold's copy. The same key that had once opened my heart, and this house was now the key to my death. I grabbed the fireplace poker and crouched behind the recliner. And then the door creaked open. The sound was like metal tearing into bone. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. High heels tapping on tile. I always loved this house, she whispered. But it looks better with blood in it. Rita, I said, loud and steady, even though I was shaking. She stopped walking. Oh, good. You're awake, she replied sweetly. I know what you did. To Rosie. To Natalie. To me. She giggled. You think you're some kind of hero now, huh? Digging up bones like they're secrets no one knew. But I knew. I planted them. I heard her move again, just out of sight. I taught Dylan everything. The silence, the power, the joy of watching someone break. I nearly vomited. And Harold, she said, her voice lowering, was more like us than you'll ever admit. I turned on the emergency alarm I'd installed after the Crow incident. A loud wailing noise filled the air. Lights flashed red. Rita screamed. I stood and ran, not toward her, but around her, straight to the laundry room where I had installed a secondary bolt on the garage door. I hit the emergency switch and flung it open. Floodlights poured in. 2 officers stood in the driveway, guns raised. Down! On the ground! Rita spun, lunged toward me with something shiny in her hand. Then, bang! A single shot rang out. She fell backward. Her eyes are still wide. Her lips curled. But this time, there was no smile. I spent the next 12 hours under observation. Shock, dehydration, high blood pressure. Nothing they hadn't seen before. Carlyle sat beside me the entire time. Silent, present. She's alive, he finally said. But barely. The blade she had was real. She was coming to kill you. I closed my eyes. What happens now? We charge her with attempted murder, with accessories to abuse, with conspiracy, and with Rosie's death. We'll reopen every file. Her name is going to be known across the country. I let out a breath I'd held for 12 years. She brought Mason, who wore a little red baseball cap and clung to her leg like a shadow. When she saw me in the hospital bed, she didn't say a word at first. Just held my hand. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved both of us." I smiled through tears. "No," I said. "You saved me. You reminded me I wasn't crazy. That I wasn't alone." She nodded, eyes glassy. "I'm going to testify," she said. "For Rosie. For me. For you." A week after returning home, I found a small white envelope in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, one photo. A little girl with pigtails, holding a sunflower. On the back, "I'm sorry I couldn't protect her, but you did. H." It was Harold's handwriting. I stared at it for hours. The guilt, the shame, the truth. Some things die with a person. Some truths, they leave letters behind. The trial was just a week away. I was finally ready to tell everything in court. Until I got another call. From the prison. Rita Carlyle had escaped during transport. And the guard who helped her was Dylan. "She's gone." That's all Carlyle said before falling silent. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, staring at the floor as though the words might somehow rewrite themselves beneath my feet. "Jean, Rita escaped." I gripped the edge of the countertop until my knuckles turned white. "Tell me you're joking." I wish I was. She was being transported for a medical evaluation when the van rerouted and never made it to the hospital. He didn't need to finish. I already knew. Dylan. He was still behind bars, or so we thought. Turns out, he'd gotten himself assigned to a low-risk transport duty inside county jail. He'd been planning this, coordinating, waiting. 2 predators, 2 monsters, back together. Within an hour, I got a call from Natalie. "She knows where I live," she sobbed. She kept a piece of Mason's baby blanket all these years. I don't know how she got it, but she left it in my mailbox last night. We were back in the nightmare. Only this time, the monsters weren't hiding. They were hunting. I told her to pack. Told her to meet me at the safe house Carlyle had arranged months ago. A small cabin 2 towns over, off-grid, no records, no names. "Take Mason and go," I told her. I'll be right behind you. But I wasn't going with her. I had something else to do. Something only I could finish. I went back into the basement, where Harold's journal still sat, where Rosie's ghost still lingered in the dust. There was one entry I hadn't dared read before. The last one. Rita told me the girl wasn't the first. Or the last. She said Dylan needed to learn restraint. Said pain was the only way to earn obedience. I tried to leave once. She told me if I did, she'd kill me and bury me beside Rosie. I stayed quiet. I stayed married. I died long before my heart stopped. He knew everything, and yet he chose to live with it. Harold wasn't innocent. He was just too cowardly to fight. That night, I walked through every room in my house, checking windows, securing doors, testing the panic alarm I'd had installed. Then I sat at the dining table with a hot cup of chamomile tea, lit only by a single bulb overhead. Waiting. Not in fear, but in resolve. And at exactly 2:11 a.m., the power went out. Again. But this time, I was ready. I sat perfectly still. I heard them enter, through the basement. Old hinges, slow creaks, whispered voices, and then footsteps. One set heavy, confident, the other lighter, swifter. Rita and Dylan, back in the home where they believed they ruled. "I know you're awake, Mama Jean," Dylan said, his voice oozing mockery. "Always the stubborn one." "She's probably shaking in her slippers," Rita sneered. I stood, flipped the hidden switch beneath the table. Boom. Floodlights snapped on. Hidden cameras activated. Panic alarm triggered. Carlisle and his team were watching the whole thing live, from a van 2 blocks away. I turned around slowly to face them as they froze in the hallway. "You came back to finish me?" I asked. Rita laughed. "To bury what you dug up." Dylan stepped forward. But I didn't flinch. "You think I'm scared of you? After what you did for 12 years. After what you did to Rosie. To Natalie." His smile faltered. "You're not God, Dylan. You're not even a man. You're just a broken boy who never grew past his mother's leash." That made Rita snap. She lunged at me, and Carlisle burst through the door. "Down! Hands in the air!" Within seconds, Dylan was tackled. Rita reached for something. A knife. But this time I was faster. I threw the hot cup of tea directly in her face. She screamed as Carlisle's partner pinned her to the ground. Sirens filled the air. The house was flooded with red and blue. It was over. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the walls. Women from shelters came to support us, Natalie, too, holding Mason on her lap. Rita looked smaller now. So did Dylan. The once smirking monster refused to lift his head as the charges were read aloud. First-degree murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, conspiracy, sexual assault. The list went on. I took the stand. Voice steady, spine straight. I am not just a victim. I am a grandmother, a nurse, a woman who lived in silence for too long. But not anymore. I walk every morning now, sometimes barefoot. The backyard is peaceful. The oak tree was removed, and in its place, I planted sunflowers. Rosie's flower. I visit the garden daily, not in sorrow, but in strength. Natalie and Mason visit often. He calls me Grandma Jean. Sometimes he runs through the grass and yells, "Look how fast I am." I always reply, "Faster than the darkness, baby." And every night before bed, I write in my new journal. But this one ends differently. I am Jean Harrington, 85 years old. survivor of silence, builder of light, and I have finally broken free. 6 months later. I still flinch when someone knocks too hard on my door. Even with both of them behind bars, I can't untrain my body from reacting to sounds: the creak of a floorboard, the hum of a van idling outside, the quiet hush before footsteps. Healing is not a straight line. It's a storm. And I'm still standing in the rain. It arrived on a Tuesday. Ordinary envelope. Government stamp. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. Inside was one sentence written in jagged, uneven handwriting. You didn't break me, Mama Jean. You birthed me. No signature. But I knew it was Dylan. My stomach knotted. My hand trembled. I stared at the words for a long time, wondering what they meant. Was he angry? Was he proud? Was it a threat? Carlyle told me to burn the letter. He's trying to crawl back into your head. Don't let him. But I didn't burn it. I pinned it inside my journal. Because I want to remember how monsters operate, not just with fists, but with words that try to haunt you forever. But I knew it was Dylan. My stomach knotted. My hand trembled. I stared at the words for a long time, wondering what they meant. Was he angry? Was he proud? Was it a threat? Carlyle told me to burn the letter. He's trying to crawl back into your head. Don't let him. But I didn't burn it. I pinned it inside my journal. Because I want to remember how monsters operate, not just with fists, but with words that try to haunt you forever. Natalie's stronger now. She's in therapy. She volunteers at a shelter for women. Mason started kindergarten. He's learning to write his name and draw stick figures of the sun and his super grandma with a cane and a cape. But trauma leaves fingerprints. Natalie called me last week crying. He's still in my head, she whispered. Even with him gone, I still hear his voice. I told her the truth. So do I. We sat on the phone, not talking, just breathing. Sometimes, that's the most healing sound two survivors can share. I was picking up my blood pressure meds when I saw him. Tall. Balding. Dark sunglasses. He was leaning against the counter, but when I walked in, he straightened and turned away. He didn't speak. But I saw the tattoo on his wrist, the same crow symbol Rita wore as a pendant. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I left the pharmacy calmly, drove straight to Carlyle's office, and showed him a sketch of the tattoo. He went pale. Rita has a following, he muttered. Small. Secretive. Women who believe they're reclaiming power by destroying weakness. My skin turned cold. Like a cult. He nodded. They call themselves the Winged Ones. The trial may be over, but Rita's shadow was still spreading. And now there were others, possibly dozens, possibly watching. Carlyle offered to relocate me, change my name, give me a new identity. But I said no. I didn't survive all this to disappear, I told him. I want to testify again. I want to speak. I want to help bring every last one of them down. He paused, then said something that reminded me of who I'd become. You're not just a survivor, Jean. You're a witness the world needs. A week later, I was invited to speak at a women's conference. I told my story to a crowd of 200 people. After my speech, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. She whispered, "You don't know me." But I knew Rita. I was one of them, until I saw what she did to you. I want to help. I stared into her eyes, and just before she turned to walk away, she handed me a photo. A photo of a young girl, with fresh bruises. And on the back, in shaky handwriting, "She's next." The girl in the photo couldn't have been more than 13. Wide eyes. Black and blue marks circling her wrist. A faint bruise on her cheekbone, hair matted, lips pursed into silence, and on the back, scribbled in rushed handwriting, "She's next." My hands trembled as I clutched the photo. I turned back to the woman who handed it to me, but she had already disappeared into the crowd. Vanished, like smoke, but not without leaving behind a mission. I brought the photo to Carlyle the next morning. He took one look and stiffened. "Where did this come from?" "She said she used to follow Rita. But she's out now. She said this girl, this one in the picture, is going to be the next victim." Carlyle rubbed his temples. "These people, they're organized, Jean. They move in silence. The winged ones are not just some strange cult. They operate online, underground. They identify girls they think are weak, orphans, foster children, runaways. Then they move in, pretending to offer protection. But they train them, break them, sell them." I could barely breathe. "Her name," I said. "We need to find her name." The photo had no location, no watermark, just the message, "She's next." We took it to the FBI unit now overseeing Rita and Dylan's case. They ran the image through facial recognition software. Nothing. No matches in the system. Not in schools, hospitals, or social services. "She's off the grid," the agent told us. "Or someone made sure she's not in any system to begin with." I sat silently until something clicked. "The scar," I said. "Look at the bottom right corner of the photo. That's a floor tile. Blue and white checkerboard." Carlyle blinked. "There's only one building in Topeka I know that still has that exact pattern." It took 2 days to get a warrant. The address was an abandoned halfway house. From the outside, it looked like a place hope went to die. Cracked windows, overgrown weeds, a broken porch swaying in the wind. But inside, we found her. Alive. Hidden in the basement. Drugged. Thin. Curled up on a mattress beside a space heater and a milk crate full of canned beans. She didn't speak at first, but when she saw me, she reached out her hand and whispered one word. "Jean." I fell to my knees. Someone had told her about me. Someone had told her I fought back. Her name was Cassandra. She'd been in foster care. Gone missing at age 11. The system forgot her. But they didn't. The winged ones found her. Groomed her. Prepared her. But someone, one of their own, sabotaged them. The woman who gave me that photo. She was a defective winged one of Rita's earliest followers. She'd witnessed what they did to Rosie, to Natalie, to me, and finally, to Cassandra. She couldn't stay silent anymore. I testified again. This time not for me, not even for Rosie, but for Cassandra, who sat in the front row, her small hands trembling mine. The courtroom was packed again. But this time, it wasn't just reporters or officers. It was the survivors. Natalie was there. So was Cheryl from the shelter. Even some of the jurors from the first trial came back, sitting quietly in support. Rita and Dylan? They didn't speak. Because they'd finally been sentenced. Life in federal prison. No parole. No appeals. No escape. I moved into a safer neighborhood. Smaller house. Sunlight everywhere. A community garden outside my kitchen window. Natalie and Mason visit every Sunday. Cassandra? She's with a kind foster family now, enrolled in school, slowly learning to smile again. We write letters every week. She ends every one the same way. "Dear Jean, thank you for being the voice I never had. I'll never forget what you did." And I write back. "Dear Cassandra, you are the reason I kept breathing. You are the voice the world needs now. Never stay quiet. I survived 12 years of abuse. But I didn't just survive for myself. I survived for Rosie, for Natalie, for Cassandra, and for every woman reading this, every girl still silenced by fear. I want you to know, you are not invisible. You are not powerless. And the silence they force on you, it is not yours to carry.